It's cold out there. Mike DeCourcy joins us. Mike, how are you, brother?
I am well, Jim. How are you? Good morning, Kevin.
I'm warm. I'm warm because I did not fall for the lies of the blue skies. It's cold outside.
Well, I went out just to my garage, and ours is insulated, and it was still cold. So that tells you something.
It does, man. We were just talking about bracketology, Mike DeCourcy's bracketology, and it's ebbs and flows. Of course, the Big Ten, the bottom of the Big Ten, Indiana is in that segment. You've got a Michigan team that is trying to crawl up there. And I think that that's a dangerous situation for an Indiana team, because I don't know that – I think there's a certain number that sometimes people get in their head that a conference like, oh, well, they don't deserve that many or this, that. And I think Indiana they don't want to be in that situation where they're being compared to someone else in the bottom of the Big Ten unless they do some things that they have not accomplished yet. But because they're kind of trending downward and where the other teams are all trending up, whether it's Rutgers, Michigan, even though it lost here, but they're playing better. It's the eye test. I think the eye test a lot. Of course, you're one of the nation's foremost bracketologists, and that's, first of all, golly, that is so much information. And where Joe Lunardi, that's all he does.
No, it's not. Well, as far as I know, he also has a VP level position at St. Joseph's University. I don't think he's retired from that job yet, so it's not all he does.
Well, he probably has. That sounds like it's a pretty cushy job.
Next time I see Joe, I'll tell him that we've all caught on to the fact that his St. Joe's gig is.
I don't know him. He seems like a great guy.
No, he's a great guy. I will tell you this, that he is so busy on that job, or at least he was 15 years ago or so. When I took my nephew, I guess it was the spring, it's February of 2008. It's February of 2008. I took him to Philly on a college trip. I took my one nephew to North Carolina, visited Duke, Carolina, and Wake during basketball season, and then I took him to Philly. So we visited Villanova and St. Joe's. And so when we went to St. Joe's, Phil Martelli had time for me, and Joe didn't. So that tells you a little bit about how busy he is.
And the funny thing is, when I think of bracketology, I think of him, I think of you. But both guys are very nice and down to earth, and he seems that with all the and because he didn't come from sports media, when that's thrust upon a lot of people, sometimes it changes. He's just the same old, seems like the same old down to earth guy that you'd like to sit down and talk to.
Oh yeah,
just like yourself. And it's great. It's like, man, you like to sit down and talk with those guys about whatever for a while. But
he's a great guy. Yeah, I was sort of there at the start of all of this, and I'll tell you how it all came about. The Blue Ribbon College Basketball Yearbook, which was started by Chris Wallace, who now works in the NBA as an executive. He was a basketball junkie from West Virginia who decided to start putting out his own publication about college basketball. It was an encyclopedic publication about each team that was relevant, and then eventually he when he got the Boston Celtics GM job. It may not have gone directly to GM, but I think he did. He went straight. He went really quickly to the top of the NBA. And when he got the job in the NBA, he sold Blue Ribbon to Joe and Chris Dortch, a sports writer from Chattanooga. I think there was one other partner at the time. I don't remember. But so they decided to do this NCAA tournament guide. This is pre-internet, remember. So they would finish the publication like wee hours of Sunday morning after Selection Sunday and have it in your hands by like Wednesday or something through FedEx or whatever. They had to get it all printed and published. So in order to get this, to get the right 68 teams, Joe sort of came up with the science of bracketology so that they didn't have to have articles ready for 100 teams. They'd have, okay, we know who's going to be in this. And that's how it all got started. Was trying to get that be as efficient as possible for that publication. And Joe did that, which was really smart to come up with that, because then ESPN latched on to him as their bracket person. But what he did that wasn't smart was he invented the word bracketology and didn't trademark it. I don't know how much money that cost him, but I'm sure ESPN sort of made up for it in the time he's been working for them. But I gotta figure he left a few bucks on the table by not trademarking that. Who has that trademark? Nobody, as far as I know. It was too late for him to do it once it was being used. Yeah, I think so. We do not use that phrase on Fox because it's so closely aligned with him. So since he's the original, I don't consider myself a bracketologist. I consider myself a bracket analyst, is what I call it. And Fox calls our publication or whatever presentation bracket forecast. So that's what they call it on Fox when they reveal my weekly brackets. John, make a note, please. I am making a note as that as well. So put that in the vernacular. Our bracket, we have our great bracket analyst. Yeah, but plus, yeah. And speaking of enough jobs, BTN, Fox, Sporting News, I know you're doing the same thing. I mean, similar things within. It's not like you're going to be a hospital administrator, but I meant something different out of. No, I know that's great. I like that. But then it's the flights and being at this studio and all of that. It's the travel, and I know it's a trying to do the studying during the travel. It's the research. I don't think people understand the enormity of the research, because if you take your favorite team and your favorite conference, now multiply that by 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's a lot of information. Yeah, I got really raked over the coals on Friday by Kentucky fans because I had Kansas. I'm sorry? Shocker. Yeah. I had my I had Kansas as my 4th #1 seed, and I had them paired in the same region with Kentucky. And I just got blasted for that. And because they kept pointing to the tremendous Kentucky win at Kansas earlier this month. And it was a great win, and they were phenomenal that day. And it's a huge element of their resume to this point. But their resume is not a 1-seed resume. And honestly, if you put them on the one line at 8, 9 a.m. on Tuesday, the 15th of February, you're putting them on the one line on one simple basis. I think they're great. And that's not how it works. And it's not how it should work. Because I think is nonsense. It has nothing to do with anything. I think they're great. If it worked, we'd all be loaded. We'd all, like, the sports books would all be broke. If I think meant anything, there would, all those sports books that are advertising on TV during the Super Bowl, they would be broke. We'd all clean them out because we don't know. That's the reality. All you can do is look at a team and the list of opponents they've beaten or lost to, and say, let that tell you the story. Not, well, Kentucky's great, but they just happen to lose basically half of their most difficult games. That doesn't count for anything. They're 5-4 against quad 1. That's for a 1 seed. That would be an abysmal record. For a 2 seed, it's not impressive, but they have an impressive team. And by the end of the next 2 weeks, they'll either have said, absolutely, we're a #1 seed, and why would you ever doubt us? Or they'll have said, yeah, we really couldn't put it together when we had to, because they've got, in their next 2 weeks, they have a Tennessee game tonight, huge game on the road. There's some really good games in college hoops tonight. They have that. They also, and these may not be in order, but they also have Alabama at home, LSU at home, and at Arkansas. Those are their next 4 games. End of those 4 games, you're going to know whether they belong in the 1 seed conversation or not. And if they only go 2-2, then the answer is maybe not, unless somebody else does worse. But to achieve their way onto the 1 line, they got to win at least 3 of those games.
Plus, Kevin, you cover the SEC a while. They've got a team in there named Auburn that is could be a roadblock to them being a number 1, because Auburn is probably going to be a number 1 seed unless someone does something to them.
Yeah, Auburn. I'm looking at their quad 1 right now, 7-2 and 6-0 v quad 2. So it's 13-2 quad 1 and quad 2. Kentucky 9-4. So yeah, I mean that, and I don't know if they have another head-to-head meeting. I do know that they're going to
play
the tournament. They'll play the SEC tournament.
Yes. But yeah, they could see each other in the SEC tournament, which would be another rematch. Yeah, I do think that, and I'm looking at Kansas 8-3 quad 1 versus Kentucky 5-4. So that proves to Mike's point, and that
the Big 12 is a much more difficult conference than. Well, I think it's a better conference.
I wouldn't say necessarily. I mean, if you looked at the challenge, I mean, the SEC went 6-4. They did pretty well. So I wouldn't say it's a much more difficult, but it's probably a little bit of a deeper conference, top to bottom, in terms of quality. But Kentucky, Auburn, Tennessee, they've got some heavyweights in that league this year in the SEC that they're definitely stronger than they've been in previous years.
What the Big 12 doesn't have in their conference is Georgia, Vandy, Ole Miss. Their worst team is Oak State, which has been beating quad 1 opponents on occasion. Their next worst team is K-State, which actually has a shot at getting to the field. Oak State's does not have a chance because they are principally because they're ineligible, but also that overall they're 12-12, 2-9 against quad 1. But like I said, they have 2 wins against quad 1 opponents. They have 4 against quad 2. That may be the grand total of the bottom of the SEC. So that's the difference. And of course, you have 10 teams in the Big 12 versus 14 in the SEC. So there's more room for poor teams to gather at the bottom.
Yep.
And talking about tonight's games, what games are coming up that you're looking at that are really going to starting to impact this end of the season?
Well, it starts with what I mentioned before, Kentucky at Tennessee, which is huge for both teams, really, because Tennessee could use that. Tennessee's been hanging around the top 5, top 6 seeds. They could use that to maybe climb up to the 3 line if they won that. They've been playing very well lately. Their offense has been clicking more than it once did.
Which could give the SEC 3 teams in the top 3, minimum top 3 lines.
Yeah, I think they could. Now they have to do some things, and tonight would be an example. And then the other one, a huge game in the Big East race is Providence against Villanova at Providence. This is probably the biggest game that's been played at Providence at the Dunkin' Donuts Center, the Dunk as they like to call it. Probably the biggest game that they've had in the last 30 years at home. And if Providence wins it, they don't mathematically clinch the Big East championship, but it would be sort of a de facto clinching. I mean, they would be at that point 12-1, and Villanova would be 12-4. So it would be really hard for Providence not to win the league if they're able to prevail at home tonight. Providence is one of those teams that's like Wisconsin in the Big Ten that is absolutely completely divided by the metrics. The performance metrics, hate them. The achievement metrics, love them because they've achieved. They've only lost 2 games all year. They have some really high quality wins like Wisconsin, like a bunch of their Big East wins, but they win a lot of close games. They just beat DePaul in overtime on Saturday. That's kind of what Providence does. I think Ed Cooley right now is a leading candidate for National Coach of the Year. What they've been able to do there with a relatively unimpressive roster, at least in terms of the recruiting, rankings that they came in with. What they've been able to do has been amazing.